Hello, I'm Joan Rodgers.
Joan, what has Oxford Leader Festival meant to you?
I've been really fortunate to have performed several times at the Oxford Leader Festival, and it's such an important festival. It brings song to so many people and attracts fabulous singers from all around the world, gives great chances to young singers too, which is just so valuable. I think Sholto and his team have done a fantastic job in establishing this as one of the most important festivals in England.
You would have been leading the Mastercourse for singing duos at the Spring Song Festival in Oxford this week.
Yes, it's really sad that we're not up in Oxford working on our course together in the Spring Song Festival, which is such an exciting venture. Of course, the priority is that we all stay safe and hope everybody is well. And we're really hoping we can get this up and running maybe later in the year. But in the meantime, we just have to enjoy all the live streaming we can get.
How would you have approached the course?
I would have approached the course in the way I always do when I'm coaching singers, doing master classes, teaching. One of the most important things is we have to enjoy what we do. Classical singing is not easy, but we have to find a way to communicate really well with our audience. That is the most important thing, that we touch people's hearts and minds. They don't want to know about our techniques. They want to know about us being authentic. That's the most important thing. So I would always look to instill confidence. Of course, I would be critiquing people. We're looking for great delivery of text, beautiful phrasing, and the overall delivery of the song. And that goes for the pianist as well, of course, the phrasing, the authenticity of what we're trying to do. As we're not all together in Oxford and I can't teach anything, I know that I have learnt so much from listening to great singers and pianists and great interpretations. And it struck me that as we all have time on our hands, this is a moment to really savour those old recordings as well as enjoy all the live streaming. So I've been listening to things I haven't heard for a long time.
The first recording you've chosen is Catherine Ferrier. Why this particular song?
Well, let's say that first of all I have a great nostalgia for Ferrier because her records were always played in my house, in my parents' house, and she was probably one of the first classical singers I heard. And I could have chosen a number of songs. Of course, I heard Che Faro and Blow the Wind Southerly, her great Mahler recordings, her Bach. But her English song for me is particularly affecting. And I've chosen A Soft Day by Charles Villiers Stanford because she does this with real simplicity and purity. And it's this wonderful velvety contralto voice, the kind of voice you don't really hear now. And the way she says, a soft day, thank God. And it's just the magical way she says that. It's really worth listening to.
You've chosen Boris Christoph singing from Mussorgsky's Nursery Cycle, not a repertoire you might immediately associate with him. What is it about his interpretation?
Well, Christoph was a great bass, of course, and we'll think of him in great roles like Boris Godunov or, the great Verdi roles. But he was a very refined singer, and I think it's really interesting to hear him singing these nursery songs by Mussorgsky, which are, interpreted through the child's voice with occasional interjections from adults. And what Christoph does so beautifully is enters the world of the child in his imagination, in his sound world. And I found this very refreshing and very inspiring before I recorded the songs myself, because it's more natural territory for a soprano or a mezzo or for a female voice in general. And to hear him transform himself into this child was so lovely. And then when we hear him bring in the interjections of the mother's voice, for instance, you hear this absolute beauty of sound. So the contrast of this little child, playful, mischievous, and the wise and loving mother, and I just love it. It's and the one I've chosen specifically of those songs in the cycle is the Hobby Horse, because it's just full of fun. But I think the whole cycle is worth listening to.
And for French repertoire, Suzanne Donco?
Yes, Suzanne Donco is one of my favourite sopranos, especially in French, but in so many other bits of repertoire too. I thought it would be nice to include French, so I'm trying to think of all the things we might have covered this week: French, German, Russian, English repertoire. And even though she sang beautifully in Lieder, she sang Fiordiligi, she sang I think Donn'Anna. She was a wonderful Mélisande in I think it's the Ansermet recording of Pelléas and Mélisande. But I've chosen her rendition of the second song in the Trois Poèmes de Stéphane Mallarmé by Ravel. They're difficult songs. They're quite esoteric. The poetry is difficult, but she brings real clarity to them, you know. And the second song, Placé Futile, which is the futile request, she brings, well, it's a beauty of line, but the poem is quite witty, and yet the music is complex. And she just brings, I think, just clarity and loveliness to it.
Nicolai Gedda was a wonderful tenor and had a broad repertoire. You've chosen him singing Schubert. Surely there are so many other great exponents of this composer's songs.
Yes, there's a particular recording of Nicolai Gedda which I heard, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago on Radio 3, of him singing Schubert's Du bist die Ruhe, and I was really struck by it. I was, you know, stopped what I was doing to listen to it. I could have chosen, obviously, the great Fischer Dieskau because he's my leader god, but I just wanted to choose this because it meant a lot to me at the time. And when I was looking it up, there are various recordings, and I was a bit dismayed. I thought, this isn't the one, it's not the right one. Then I landed on this one. It's a 1964 recording on the Orfeo label. And he brings beautiful legato line to this song. Beauty of tone, which I think he's really enjoying his own voice. Why not? And it's quite slow, quite self-indulgent. Wouldn't be to everybody's taste. But I think it's just a really gorgeous, gorgeous rendition.
And finally, Janet Baker.
I couldn't not include Janet Baker, as I grew up with her as my idol. And I suppose the first things I listened to were her Frauenliebe und Leben, which was so beautiful, so refreshing. And listened to lots of her things. But I think this is a sort of iconic recording, really, and I think lots of people will know this, which is her singing Ich bin der Welt abhanden gekommen from the Rückertlieder by Mahler, and it's that famous recording with Sir John Barbirolli and the Halle Orchestra, and she is in wonderful voice. It's the most wonderful use of colour and dynamic control, and it seems to me everything comes together and it's perfection. So that's my last
Thank you, Joan.
sorry, so that's my list. They would be sort of desert island discs in some ways for me.
Thank you, Joan Rodgers.
Thank you, and hope everybody stays well.